Hi, ladies. Welcome to today's live broadcast on how to create emotional connection with the man, because that's what we want to do so that he will commit to you. And also, it feels really juicy and delicious when we are connected to a man emotionally. That's what this conversation is all about tonight. So I want to thank you all for being here. I've got a live here on YouTube and also on Facebook. So it's just so fun. I'm kind of getting the technology learning curve down. And so I want to thank you for being here. And I'm just going to dive right in. I think that it's so awesome. I'm going to move this box here to have a deep emotional connection with the man, but sometimes we don't really realize how to do that, or we forget with all these other things that I'm trying to teach you. And so let's just jump right in. The first thing that's really important to create an emotional connection with a man is to remember that you need to be emotionally vulnerable with him. Vulnerability invites so much trust, because what you're saying is that you're willing to share your secrets, your fears, your insecurities with him, which really initiates some natural response in a man, that he's going to want to, take you in his arms and comfort you, and that's what you want from him, right? And so you have to be willing to let your guard down and let him in to the point where he can feel like your hero. He can be there for you. And so some of the ways that I do this is simple things, just like, it could be like, I didn't sleep last night, so I felt really fragile today. Have you ever not slept the night before and you wake up the next day and everything seems so challenging? And it's like, if you could just get a good night's sleep, everything feels, doable, and you've got all this power. So sometimes when I don't sleep, I feel that way. So maybe you can relate to that. As I wake up the next day and I'm like, I've got the nervous jitters or whatever. And so I'll tell my husband that, be like, I get home and he's like, how was your day? And I'm like, it was really challenging. And I'll just like lean into him. And then he naturally just has his arms there. He takes me in his arms and I let him comfort me. And the reason why this is really important is because, remember, the objective is to create an emotional connection with a man. When you're vulnerable, you set the stage, you create a space, and really by how you're behaving, you create the space for him to do the same. That's what you want. You really want him to start sharing how he feels and about how he feels about his insecurities and fears. And so what you have to do is go first. And I know that can be hard for some of us women that are in our masculine energy, or we're being weak like that might reveal too much, and you might feel really insecure to open up in that way to a man. But if you don't open up in that way to a man, he's not going to be able to connect with you. So make sure that you invite more intimacy and trust in your relationship by sharing what you're struggling with him. And so be prepared for him to do this. This is the interesting thing. He's going to he's going to want to solve your problem in the process of doing this. So when you ask a man or share with a man, about what you're struggling with, he's going to probably offer you some advice. And sometimes we just want to be heard, but sometimes they miss that. They miss that you're just needing a hug. You don't really need him to solve your problem. But if he volunteers some suggestions, you really want to hear him out, because if you shut him down, he's not going to do that again. And so my husband does this. He will offer me some suggestions, because I think a part of it is he thinks that I'm asking him to solve my problem when I'm sharing with him how I'm feeling. So sometimes, and not all the times, but I think men naturally want to help us. And so if you start sharing, sometimes instead of comforting you, they might just assume that you're asking for help because we want them to help us, and then they might try to solve your problem. So you don't want to push him away when he does it. Just be prepared that may happen, and that's okay. And then you have to listen patiently, even though you're the one who has a need right now, right? Or you're sharing with him how you're vulnerable. You have to listen patiently so that he will finish solving your problem. Thank him for the great advice that he just gave you. You're going to take it into consideration. You hadn't considered that. And then you can be like, I need a hug, So sometimes you might have to go back in, but just be tenacious, because the benefit of being tenacious is that it's going to create the space that I just shared so that he can start doing the same. So the key is for you to go first. You have to create that space, being vulnerable and sharing what you're struggling with, sharing your fears, your insecurities. And then after that, he will feel that it's safe to do the same with you. And that's what you want him to do, because men have fears and insecurities and secrets too. They're just because they're men doesn't mean they don't have feelings. They do. They have feelings. They just mask them because they want to show up really strong for us and be brave for us, and they don't want us to see that side of them because they don't want to appear weak. But vulnerability is not weakness. There's so much power in vulnerability and asking for help. And because basically we don't want to walk through life by ourselves, right? We want somebody to share our life with. And so this is the fastest way to create emotional connection with the man, is by being emotional, vulnerable, and intimate. And let me just say hi to my YouTube ladies. Hi, ladies. I'm just typing in a little chat here. And if you have a question, ladies, please post it in the chat below so that I can make this call interactive if you're interested. And I won't use your name, so no one will know who asked the question. And hi, Gina. And let me see, there's a whole bunch. Hi, Robin. I'm just seeing a couple of the ladies coming on. Hi, Carol. Thank you for being here. So I wanted to go back to talking about how to create emotional connection with a man. So being vulnerable, sharing what is troubling you so that he'll be inspired to do the same. So when he does, which is great, you want him to share with you how he's feeling. But when he does, you want to be really careful to listen to him deeply and to acknowledge what he shared with you, because it's very hard for men to open up and be vulnerable with women. It is really hard. So once he does that, you don't want to miss it, because you want to make sure that he knows that you're listening to him. If he feels heard, it's just like how we want to be heard and understood. It's the same thing. If he feels that you're really listening to him and you care and you understand him, he's going to feel really close to you. He's going to feel like he can trust you, and he's going to feel like he's safe with you. And let me tell you what, he's going to want to come back for more of that, because he is going to find a very deep, satisfying feeling about being able to reveal that part of him that he hides from the rest of the world with you, because he trusted it's safe. So right there, that alone, you're like his best friend. You're holding those secrets in a vault. You will never, ever, ever use those things that he shares with you against him. You will never, good point, Susie, ever use those against him. And I know that's really hard sometimes in the heat of the moment when we're triggered or we're upset, for you to lash back and maybe say, well, you did this or you did that. And all of you know, I know intellectually you know this, but it's hard to remember it when you're triggered, that scorekeeping, bringing anything up from the past or something he shared in confidence, maybe someone's done that to you, it does not feel good. And it's like, if that's ever happened to you, what's the first thing you think? I'm never going to tell that person that again. So you feel so violated and betrayed when somebody brings up something that you shared with them in confidence, later. And so what else do I want to share with you? I'm just reading my notes here. Yeah, so never use what he shares against him as that second tip. So the third one is, I think this is just so fun. Just, adore him. Be affectionate. Men love it when you're affectionate. And one of the things I like to do is scratch my husband's head. He loves that. When you just give yourself a good head scratch, oh, it feels so good to scratch your scalp. And so when we're watching TV, I'll just have my hand at the back of his head, and I'll just be, tickling his scalp and massaging it and scratching it, and it feels really good. He likes it. It's like a dog. He's like, oh. And so, so be affectionate. Men love that, pet him. Men like to be pet, and hold his hand, put your arm around his. Just men love affection, and they want to see it from you. So if you're not used to being affectionate, you need to practice more affection with a man, because they really love it, and that creates an emotional connection with them. And also what's really nice is the little foot massages. Those are great to do when you're watching TV. Just simple things like that really show that you care about him and that he matters to you. And when you do that, his heart opens more to you. And you're creating, again, so much safety for him to open up and be relaxed around you that, of course, he's going to keep coming back for more and be with you and nobody else. And that's what we want. And so the last thing I want to share them and answer questions is to, and I know these are reminders, maybe you've already heard all these things, but sometimes it's just so great to hear it again, especially if you're single. And then if you're in a relationship, it's really good reminders to not forget that just because you're in a relationship, you cannot forget these principles. You have to remember that you want this to last. You want your relationship to last for a lifetime. I certainly do. And so I'm practicing this on a regular basis so that my husband wants to come home to me, wants to open up to me, wants to nurture me and feel safe in sharing how he's feeling so that I know what's going on. And so the last one is to be playful and fun. When you play together and you have these little experiences, it creates bonding. So if you go on a little excursion, maybe you walk down to town and it's really hot and you break out in a sweat. And so anything like that, just doesn't matter what happens. You got to be playful about it and lighthearted because it's going to create a lot of memories, and the memories is how you bond. So be playful and in your interactions with him. Don't always go to that place where you need to know and you need to talk and life is too short for that. We have to do a lot of our processing ourselves, right? It's really good that you learn how to process your feelings so that you don't take all of that to your man, because they can only process so much with you. So save some of that processing for your girlfriends and let them guide you, or me, a coach like me, or your community, and that will really serve you in the long run. And so let me check out some of the questions that you might have posted. I'm just going to read my posts. Okay. Let me see. It's kind of hard to do this with both calls. Let's see. Okay, I'm reading a question. I'm just reading the question right now. The initial text. Okay, the question is, what if you recently reconnect with a man, he calls and you tell him later via text you like hearing from him and look forward to catching up since he said he would plan. That's okay, even though you initiated the text. Is it as though you are giving permission for him to pursue? Absolutely. Yes. You want to respond to a man. So dating isn't it's not really a game, but there is some principles you need to follow. But if a man calls you, by all means, I mean, if you missed the call, I would just recommend calling him right back, being like, "Hi, I see you called." And then if he doesn't answer, leave him a message and be like, "Oh, I'm sorry I missed you. Let me just restart my chat." Just be like, "I'm sorry I missed you. I look forward to hearing from you. Go ahead and give me a call back." And then you can follow it up with a chat. You're not pursuing him. He called you. If a man picks up the phone to call you, that's great. You want to reward him for that kind of behavior so that he does it again. So if you just let that go to voicemail and you don't call him back and just text him, he just put his neck on the line, right? So you want to reward it. And yay, hi, Vicky, cool. So you want to reward good behavior. When he does things you like, you want to quickly let him know so that he'll keep doing it. And so he's still going to pursue you because you've just shown him how much you like it when he calls you. And that's going to feel good to him, so he's going to do it more. So every situation is different, but that's what I would say to the question that she posted. And let's see if there's any other questions. Let's see. Hi, Susie. So she's saying she's heard someone else say, if you want him to listen but don't need a solution, it's a good idea to say that up front. Yeah, absolutely. If you really just want to be heard and you don't want him to offer solutions, which is what they're going to do naturally, then you need to tell him that right up front. And I sometimes forget to do this, and I'll come home and I'll be like, no, whatever it is, it's going on, I didn't sleep and I'm feeling scattered and, I had a really challenging day. And then he'll start going, well, maybe we should go to bed earlier tonight. And he'll start like solving my problem. And I'm like, I don't need you to solve my problem. I just want you to listen to me. So that's how men feel too. So yeah, if you just need him to listen, you have to get in the habit of saying, honey, I I had a challenging day and I just want to share it with you, but I don't want you to feel like you have to say anything. I just want to talk. Do you have 10 minutes? And then he will just say, sure. Because men really listen. I feel like men can sometimes be better listeners than women. I think that we tend to talk so much because we're we're run by our emotions, and we love to share and communicate, and we like to share how we're feeling, that we're in the habit of doing that, and it feels good to us because that's what we do. But then men, they don't always do that. So I think we take it for granted that they're always going to be there listening. And my husband is such a great listener. He's so patient, and I talk a lot. Obviously, you know that by now. And so I can just go and go and go. And I have to remember to reel it in because sometimes he'll just sit there and listen to me for like 20 minutes. And then I realize that he's just been sitting there listening. And then he tries to solve my problem. So yeah, you're right. You got to say that first because otherwise they will. And I think it's great that men want to help us solve our problems, but sometimes it can be really frustrating. So recap on the purpose of this call was how to create an emotional connection with the man. You want to be vulnerable, share what you're struggling with, ask him for a hug, and let him lean into him and let him be your hero. If he tried to solve your problem and you didn't ask him not to, then be grateful. Thank him for those great ideas. The second piece was never use what he shares against you, because that could cause him to close down and back up. And then he's going to be more reluctant to open up to you in the future. So it's all about you going first, being vulnerable, kind of showing him what it looks like so that you invite that deeper trust and intimacy, and then never sharing what he uses against him, because he's going to share with you. And once your man starts sharing with you, that's amazing. It feels so good to know that he trusts you that much to share that side of you that he doesn't share with anybody else. And believe me, he does not share anything else with anybody like he shares with you. And that's what you want. That's what relationships are all about, that mutual trust. And then make sure you're affectionate and show that you adore him, and tell him, we forget that men need compliments too. They need to be reassured. And so the last piece was to be playful and fun. Don't forget about being fun and playful. And if you have a struggle with being fun and playful in your life, then you need to do that deep inner work around clearing out those blocks that keep you from being fun and playful. Because at this point in life, we've already had enough challenges. We've had enough painful experiences. Everybody has. And so we don't want to lead with that. We want to leave that behind and move into a place in our life where we're sourcing all of our energy from love and just being in the moment, and just recognizing how precious time is, and that time isn't promised, and just living in the moment. And that's where all your power is. And so I don't see any more questions up here. So don't respond. Let's see. Don't respond to a voicemail with a text back. I would call him back, to be honest. And if you already text him, that's okay. Just pick up the phone and call him. I mean, it's not a game. You don't want him to feel like you're playing hard to get. And so I would just pick it up and say, hey, I had a few minutes, and I know you called me earlier and I sent you that text, but I just wanted to say hi and hear your voice, even though it's just on the voicemail. So if you have some time, go ahead and call me back. I guess we're playing phone tag. So it's just something that simple, right? It's okay that you respond to a voicemail with a text. Don't overthink it, but it's okay to call, especially if it's the same day, because you're like, hey, I just got home and I thought I'd try to catch you. Sorry, I missed your call earlier. Thanks for calling. It's great to hear from you. Give me a call back, that kind of thing. So this issue of sharing private moments and confidence, please comment on a guy who shares yours with another woman. Oh, that's not good. Also, what about dishing about your relationship with your friend? Yeah. Yeah, so I'm sorry that happened. So sometimes, depending on the level of emotional maturity that the man you're dating or in a relationship has, he might share something that you shared with him with a woman friend or someone to maybe get some help. Maybe he's like, I don't know what to do. She shared with me that whatever it was. Let's see, let me try to think of something that would be relevant. I am sorry, I'm drawing a blank on a real world example. If you have the courage to put a real world example in, that would be helpful. So, I'm I don't think it's okay to share with other people when you're in a committed relationship. It's really important to hold that trust, that bond. So when you're married and you're moving into a committed relationship, you want to be careful who you share the intimate details of your relationship with, especially your girlfriends. Your relationships have to reform. Your girlfriends are no longer your go-to for the intimate details. Your go-to needs to be your husband or your fiance or your boyfriend. He needs to be the one that you go to. If you don't have that level of communication, you need to work on fostering that, because at the end of the day, that's how relationships break down. If you're turning to other people instead of each other. And I've learned this by my own, by my own mistakes I've made in the past. So if I have a challenge or an issue, I'm going to bring it to my husband first. But first, I'm going to work through it on my own, get to the truth, the thing behind the thing, and then I'm going to sit down with him and talk to him about it. And there have been occasions, it is appropriate sometimes to share something that you don't really know how to approach with your husband, your boyfriend, or the man you're dating. So I think in that case, you definitely need to turn to a friend, but you want to make sure that friend is a woman that is completely reliable, that she is not going to judge you, she's not going to use it against you, and she's never going to share it. And I think all of us have one of those people in our lives, and if it's not that person, it could be me. I would not share that. So, or your community. Reach out to somebody that is a coach, therapist. Make a one-time appointment and get some feedback so that you don't indulge too much information to your friends. And it's not that you can't trust your friends. Don't get me wrong. It's not that you can't trust them. It's just that this is not about them. It's about you, and that's why you got into a relationship, to form that bond. So to answer your question about sharing with a friend, I would talk to him about it, and I would just be very, if you can, if things are still at a point where you can discuss it, and just say, I just wanted to talk with you. Is this a good time? I know you shared something with Carol that we had discussed, and I just wanted to talk to you about that and how that made me feel when I found out. Do you see how I'm approaching it? So you're not going to attack him. You're not going to be like, I can't believe you did that. Because if you do, he's going to shut down. So if you don't want him to ever do that again, you have to do it very gently. He might not have known how to approach you. Maybe you haven't been approachable. So maybe you just talk to him really gently and say, I know you had good intentions, but you could just come to me, and I want to be the person you turn to. So in order for him to turn to you, you have to make sure it's safe for him to do so. And that goes back to what I was talking about at the beginning of the call about being vulnerable. If you've been vulnerable with him and he turns to somebody else, you have to talk to him about that. But you need to remain vulnerable in that moment. Like, I feel really vulnerable because you shared that with her. So as you see, you're being even vulnerable. Now, if he continues to do that, it's going to be very hard for you to trust him. So sometimes men just don't know this, and we have to, hate to use the word, but train them, teach them how we want to be treated. So if you really want a healthy, juicy relationship, you're going to have to go through these growing pains. They're a part of becoming more intimate. Sometimes it's really uncomfortable to have these kind of conversations, but this is what creates more emotional intimacy. So you have to risk being even more vulnerable so that you guys can understand each other, so you guys can grow together. Okay, so what about dishing about your relationship with your friends? Yeah, I don't recommend that. If you're having problems in your relationship, you need to talk about the person you're in a relationship with. That's called third-party communication. It's super toxic. And it's really hard to not do. It is. It takes a level of maturity to stop the impulse, because you get a lot of feedback from your friends. They're all going to chime in and give you their most valuable opinion. But guess what? They're not standing in your shoes, so they don't know exactly what you're going through. They can never know exactly what you're going through. And so you have to temper all of this with here's a rule of thumb. What would you want if have to reverse it? Okay, if your boyfriend found out your husband, that you shared this information with your friends, how would he feel? There's a rule of thumb. Think about that. How would your man feel to know that you were sharing these details? So there's some details you can share. What you guys had for dinner, were you guys going on a trip? Maybe you had a disagreement and you're a little upset and you're working through it. That's okay. You don't really need to get into the details of what the disagreement is about. Or maybe you can. Maybe you can say, I went shopping and spent too much money and he's upset with me. That's okay to share because that's on you, right? So, but what your husband does, it would be very careful because you don't want to violate his trust. Trust is gained in inches and it's lost in miles. In other words, you create trust in increments, right? And it takes time to build it. One violation, one boundary violation of oversharing can take all of that trust that you built up and just take it right away. And then you have to rebuild the trust again. But now it's harder because somebody's been hurt and and we hold on to our hurts. Not healthy, but we do hold on to those hurts. Okay, I hope this was helpful, ladies. Thank you for your wonderful questions. Those were really fantastic. And I hope this training helped you to create more intimacy. Go on your dates. Share with your date if you're stressed out, if you're nervous, if you had a hard time that day, you're struggling with your children, you know, or you're going to be an empty nester, or maybe you never had children and that was always something that you had hoped to happen. Be open up, be vulnerable, because those it's just being real. So the more real you are, the more likely he is to see you as someone he can have a relationship with. Okay, ladies, sending you lots of love today. Thank you so much for being here. Bye.